For a long time I wanted to get into the Yakuza series, but I didn't know why. Before I played Yakuza 3 I barely knew what I was going into. I had seen some footage of the game, but it was very minimal and a long time ago, and the few people I knew that played the game never really went into detail what the game was about. Luckily the Yakuza Collection was right around the corner, giving me a chance to fully dive into the series. Or well, not completely, as the Yakuza Collection only contains Yakuza 3 to 5. That is why I started on Yakuza 3. This could cause a very big problem because you don't start a series in the middle. So I was prepared that the story could be a problem for me as I didn't play the previous games. But watching a recap about those games wouldn't work for me either. So I decided to just dive in to see what this game can do and if the series is something for me. Even if I can't follow the story, I'm hoping that the other aspects of the game are good enough and enjoyable to hook me on the series. If this would be the case, I would go back for sure to play the other games to fill in the story gaps that I don't understand. So let's find out if Yakuza 3 did what I'm hoping for, and if it's a good game. Yakuza 3 begins with an opening backed by an even better soundtrack, setting the tone for the story before you even see the main menu. In Yakuza 3 we follow Kazuma Kiryu, who's done with his Yakuza life and instead is going to run an orphanage. But the Yakuza life isn't done with him and pulls him back into it after his father figure and former boss was shot and the land deed of his orphanage was stolen and fell into corporate hands that want to use that land for other purposes. Kiryu will stop at nothing to protect the kids from his orphanage and punch through everyone that is in his way. However, some things don't appear to be that simple, as mystery shrouds the shooting and the theft of the land. The story of Yakuza 3 is straightforward except for one little thingy. I had no idea what Yakuza meant and the game doesn't really explain it. The English equivalent of the word Yakuza is gangster. So you might think this is a gangster story where a member decided to stop being part of it and go another way. However, when you dive a bit deeper into what Yakuza means, I would say Yakuzas aren't just gangsters and that there's way more to it. While you do see these members do terrible things which you could connect to gangster and mafia practices, there are some clear differences. Yakuza have a code and hold a sense of honor in the way they do things. I'm not going too deep into the subject, but think of things like protecting not only their land, but also the people that live on it. But my favorite code that they have is that they don't favor using guns, which you can relate back into the combat of the game. The combat is almost classic beat 'em up with some small twists here and there. Every punch and kick you connect carries a good impact. You can also use objects around you or even weapons, though to me the combat felt more suited for fists than for a katana. The boss battles, however, are really rough, not in terms of difficulty, but more in how the combat works. Maybe it was just me, but sometimes I just couldn't break my opponent's guard, which meant endless combo spamming until I grind away the boss HP with single hits. Weapons made this progress faster, but they have a durability and broke halfway through the fight and overall felt dull to use. Though once you reach a higher level, things get a little easier. But still, some of these boss battles felt more like Street Fighter button mashers, which took away the fun sometimes. However, fighting the endless waves of random encounter thugs made up for that completely. It's just satisfying to punch them in the face or whack their heads through a sign or even crush them under a large tuna. The game has countless finishing moves that are brutal or just straight up silly, making you laugh out loud. You can even get more finishers and combos through the leveling system. You gain XP during the game by completing all sorts of tasks and beating all sorts of thugs and bosses. Once you went up enough levels you can upgrade one of the 4 traits, which in turn affects combat. Think of more health or longer combos and counters. The idea behind it is fine and simple, but it lacks the polish to make this combat stand out. But here's the thing. To me the combat felt not like the main focus of the gameplay, but more like one of the many minigames that the game has to offer. While most of the time is spent on extensive cutscenes and storytelling, you can also play a lot of minigames. From bowling to pool to baseball to even a crane game or a shooter, this game has so many different minigames to keep you busy with, and most of them are actually fun and come sometimes with a decent challenge. And when you're not too busy playing many of these minigames, you do one of the many sub-stories. Sub-stories are basically Ubisoft busywork, but good. There are short stories that have multiple phases that you unlock as the story progresses. These sub-stories can be about anything, from a woman that wants you to buy a bottle of water at a store, to discussing a topic like suicide, or even trying to teach you Japanese culture, or even English. And even though the latter one was a bit pointless as the full game is already English subbed, it was a lot of fun to see many of these sub-stories to an end, as there were some weird endings. But, as I said before, most time is spent on the story. The strength of this game lies within its story. However, it also has one big weakness. The term soap opera is used by many to describe Yakuza's story, and I agree with that. We see Kiryu at work as Yakuza, but he also teaches and takes care of the children at the orphanage. Many of the problems these kids struggle with felt very real. For example, getting made fun of for not having parents, or even treated completely differently because of that. But there are also the common child problems to solve. Things like borrowing money or taking responsibility for doing your chores. The game portrays these problems in a good and enjoyable manner. However, despite these moments being portrayed in a good manner, it does throw the pacing of the overall story all over the place. The story starts slowly and suddenly picks up some speed, but then suddenly comes to a complete standstill just so that you can take care of one of these orphans. It even happens near the end of the game, which made me impatient as I just wanted to see what was going to happen next. But despite the chaotic pacing, the story is surprisingly good. Having not played the previous Yakuza titles didn't have a big impact on my experience. Events from other games are talked about and referred to, and most of the time they even give you a small recap of those events. There is just a clear and good standalone story in Yakuza 3. You can follow the story and character development without knowledge from the previous games. I have no regrets by starting with the Yakuza Collection, and just as I hoped, made me want to dive deeper into the other games. The story in Yakuza 3 really had some good moments that made me feel for the characters, but also moments that were just a joy to watch. Because of its good presentation, it sometimes just felt like watching a super dramatic movie than playing an actual game. All the voice acting is done in Japanese with English subtitles, and there is no option for English dub. Personally, I prefer the game in its original language, but if you're not a fan of Japanese, the first few hours might be really rough. Still, the quality of the voice acting is amazing, especially the main character's voice actor. He always speaks calm and focused with a bare minimum of emotions, which suits his character like a glove. But when he speaks with emotion, it's amazing and truly one of the best voice acting I heard in a long time. The music is also really nice, these guitar-packed tracks that make you feel like an absolute badass when you fight some random thugs on the street. Lastly, I quickly want to talk about the visual atmosphere this game creates. The game takes place in Tokyo and Okinawa, and they really feel like Japanese cities. Every building, store and plaza looks so realistic. Every street and building is packed with these details. Every location feels so unique, making the map feel twice as big, while it's actually a very small map. And while the NPCs that walk around are mindless drones, they actually fit it perfectly. Every location you visit in this game breathes this atmosphere that you would expect from a Japanese game. I just really love the attention to detail, which is also the aspect that binds this whole game nicely together. But let's wrap up this review. Yakuza 3 is an okay game, which is around 20 to 25 hours long, and while the pacing is chaotic, it doesn't ruin the story. It has some really good moments and touches some interesting uncommon topics. Combat might be rough during boss battles, but fighting random thugs is a lot of fun. There are a ton of minigames and side stories to do, which are very enjoyable. And once you have completed the game, there's even more things to do as you unlock modes like free roaming, challenge mode and New Game Plus. Overall, the game is just a lot of fun, but if you don't like dramatic soap operas and the atmosphere that the game creates, you might have a rough time playing Yakuza 3. Though, if you don't like the Japanese language, then you are out of options, as Yakuza 3 comes in only one. So if you have a slight interest in the series and none of the before mentioned points are a problem, I recommend you give Yakuza 3 a try. Unfortunately, you can only get Yakuza 3 for the PS4 with the Yakuza Collection, which means paying full price for 3 games while you're not even sure if you will play them all. If you don't want to do that, but still have a PS3, you could try to get a used copy of Yakuza 3, however that might be a difficult task. Though if money is not the issue, you could take the same risk like I did. And that concludes my review of Yakuza 3. I hope it was useful to you. If you already played it, do you agree or disagree with my opinion? Either way, I would love to hear your thoughts on the game down below. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, leave a like and consider subscribing. And with that all being said, I wish you a good day and until next time.